And welcome to the 100th episode of the podcast. I said that I'd have a new name by the 100th episode, but I'm not sure. Shank is here, Bingo is here, Chaille's here, and we have special guests coming up just after this segment. Cedric and Electric Dave, who built the new studio. Actually, a lot of people built it, but they built the main component, which is the bar. Yeah, we were at Betty's house for some reason. Betty, who's been on the podcast, Mayor Betty, Nurse Betty, and we're over there, and they had a fucking great bar in their living room. And I said, I've always wanted that in the Funhouse, is like a serious bar. And fucking Cedric goes, I build bars. Why didn't you tell me that in the last 7 years we've had this place? That's so, Electric Dave and Cedric made a nice 12-seater bar here in the Funhouse that you, the listeners, helped pay for with the NFL auction, helmet auction. So, and I just remembered this word. Hennigan was on the podcast once. And he had this word I'd never heard, and I was after when we were drunk, I said, that's the fucking name of the podcast. So I'm going to put this up for a vote from the listeners. Either we keep Doug Stanhope Podcast, because it's simple, and no one else is using it, that I know of. We were going to go with the Funhouse Podcast. It seemed kind of a no-brainer, but there's 3 already out there. Shot clog. You ever heard that word? A shot clog.
I remember this.
Yeah, is someone who is annoying, an annoying bore that you tolerate only because he's buying the drinks. So I thought that it's a completely appropriate name for the podcast. Doug Stanhope Shot Clog Podcast. It rolls well, and I really like it. But I'm going to leave it up to you, the listeners, on the Twitter. As I head to the UK, yeah, tell me your opinion. Shot clog. It's a fucking brilliant word.
So this is either or.
Yeah, or Doug Stanhope's podcast.
It either stays the same.
Doug Stanhope. I don't even know what the fucking name is now.
You should try listening to an episode.
I like the name.
I couldn't sit through it. You like what? The Doug Stanhope podcast or Shot Clog?
Yeah, because then if you just search Stanhope, then it comes up, because that's usually what you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's such a random, obscure word. It's almost like you're coining it by bringing it out of obscurity.
Resurrecting.
Doug Stanhope's Shot Clog Podcast.
Okay, so you would leave all right, I like it. I remember when we were drunk and everybody liked Shot Clog.
Yeah, and then in the morning you just hate everything, so you assume you're wrong about that good idea. Because every other idea you had sucked. The UK is coming up quickly. Starting to panic because I got to get all this shit done for the book before I go, and then remember what the fuck I'm going to say when I get there. And doing 1,000 interviews. And this one, you guys got to check it out because you guys are going to be the only one in on the gag. There's a comedy website over there called beyondthejoke.co.uk. And they have this interview. If you click on interviews at beyondthejoke.co.uk, you'll see my interview. And what they do, they have a section, it's called Rarely Asked Questions. So when the PR girl sent me this list of questions, she goes, here's an example with a link, and I click on it, and all the questions for all the comedians that do this are the same. So they're not interviewing you. They're basically giving you a form to fill out with 13 questions that are random. Mostly, what bothered me about it is the first one is, what's the first thing you do before you go on, or last thing you do before you go on stage, aside from check your knickers and pick spinach out of your teeth? Like, all right, you're using a joke over and over again. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to be a fucking cartoony interview, you can't have the same joke. It ruffled my feathers.
Yes. Like, it sounds like a Match.com setup.
So what I did is I non-answered the first 2 questions just with my opinions about this is, I'm not doing an interview. I'm filling out a comment card. You couldn't make this less personal unless you had multiple choice answers. And then I originally wrote, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to, since you're giving me, questions you've already asked other people, I'm just going to give you other answers from old interviews I can find online to different questions from people who are actually interviewing me. So I just started filling in, just copy and paste answers I gave in other interviews into that interview that didn't make any sense. And then Brian shored it up and he found old answers that almost made sense with the question, but still sound like I'm just a rambling idiot who just didn't listen to the question. And they don't know that I did, because we took out the part where I said, I'm just going to put in other answers. And we just put them in regardless. So check that interview out. I thought it was, I had a hoot doing that.
So instead of just waking up at 11, doing the interview and getting the fuck through it, you actually did research to fuck with their process.
Yes.
Which
absolutely.
extended the actual project probably took longer than the interview.
I did consider that. This is taking way longer than just give him some flippant answer.
Fucking do it and get it over with. Yeah.
I couldn't do that. But yeah, the interview process is getting a little old because they ask the same questions all the time, but
not just them. You're saying like every time you do an interview.
Interviewers generally ask the same litany of questions, and even if so you just feel like you only have one answer, so you just feel like it's almost like doing the exact same act over and over again. And I'm going, well, like I said in other interviews. So if anyone's Googling for interviews, they're not, he just says the same shit. Well, they asked the same shit.
It's like a career-long junket.
I fucking love when an interviewer actually has done a lot of research and goes, well, you said this before, but how did that make, and like they're segueing from other boring questions that I've answered repeatedly. Those are nice and they're rare. And with the fucking UK, it's always on Skype where there's a 5-second delay and you say something. Like, what kind of publication do you work for that can't afford a fucking landline? 15 minutes of international charges. Really? Because you say the answer and then you hear your answer back as he's cut in, because I stutter like a pig. And so he starts another question and then you can hear your echo that's interrupting his question. And so it's mostly, I'm sorry, can you, no, go ahead. No, you go. No, go ahead. Fuck this. Just make something up. Just go find other interviews and copy and paste my answers into that. And just, I'll say I talked to you.
I mean, you could do it.
If anyone fact checks it.
You could fake it. I mean,
I would love if anyone just put out an interview that I never did and just put outrageous claims in it. Yeah, that would be fucking hilarious to me. If you have some kind of dumb comedy website, just make up an interview I never did. And if it ever comes back, I'll go, yeah, I must have been drunk. I don't remember that. But I probably did it. Bingo Bingaman. Now you're all about public speaking. Bingo Bingaman.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, you're leaning into the microphone.
I wouldn't say that.
Bingo had a showing here on Sunday night of her 2 videos that she has out. The one that the finished version of the unfinished Whiskey Girl song, and then your own song.
Yeah.
From your soon-to-be released album one day, 10 years in the making.
Yep.
And so she actually had to go up. They had her and another woman that showed a couple of her own music videos. And Bingo Bingaman had to introduce it. And if anyone knows her, she will absolutely not speak in public, much less she won't even perform music in public. Or even at the Funhouse for a Super Bowl party or a private function.
You can
public.
You can catch her at a thrift store if they've got an upright piano for sale at the Goodwill. Because she will perform there. But anytime there's a group of people that are
Nobody's
there to
paying
see.
attention there.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Well, you don't think they are, but yeah.
I'm fine if I'm on the same level as anybody, but you put me 3 inches up on a stage where people's paying attention and I fall the fuck apart.
I understand. You've seen me fall apart public speaking as opposed to doing stand-up comedy.
That's true, I have.
Yeah.
You've crumbled before, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Wanted to move out of town failures.
Yeah.
Just speaking at City Hall or... Yeah, terrible. Unless I have everything has to... I've done this so long that I have to have my stool, and here's my drink, and I got a drink waiting in the wings, and everyone's already happy to see me and clapping, and that doesn't happen at City Hall. You don't get a fucking huge, thunderous, standing round of applause because you want to speak your piece about plastic bag issues.
Actually, City Hall would be a great place to start. to really build your metal, you know?
I'm going to use that in an interview because that's one of the common questions. What advice do you have for young comics? That's it. Well, I don't have to say it in an interview. I just said it here.
Yeah.
You know what? Before you email me and ask me.
Quote it in your interview.
Use it in your interviews.
Go to city council and speak on a topic and make it funny.
At least 3 before you give up.
Yeah, and email me when you've done that. And get your friend to videotape it on his phone. And don't put it on YouTube. You fucking, all these open mic people that, hey, this is a YouTube video of my 3rd time on stage. Tell me what you think. Well, I think you shouldn't put your 3rd time on stage out for the public.
My friend said I did
shit all over you. Everyone stinks for years. And that's permanent. I have notebooks I'm ashamed of, but they're not on YouTube. I'm just terrified someone's going to get in the crawl space and read one of my early notebooks. Oh, my God. But Bingo, just like an open micer, Bingo had how she was going to introduce the songs, and for about 48 solid hours, except for a couple hours of sleep, she was pacing in circles around the house, just saying it out loud over and over. I would do that for maybe an hour before an open mic. At my most amateur day, and you just on a loop.
I know, I was so nervous.
And just said it out loud. And then, and we went down, even though you scheduled this fucking thing right in the middle of a Packers game on Sunday night.
I didn't schedule it, it was someone else.
I'm not a Packers fan, but everyone that comes to the Funhouse.
Oh, you talk about the Seahawks game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's your team. So, and it was the night game. So I've been drinking since 10 in the morning. And then at some point I go, I can host the thing if you don't have a host, because you don't want to go up cold and being you. Can't send Bingo out cold. So, I went down and I was in my pints and feeling very,
You dressed up for me? You wore a suit?
Yeah, almost a tuxedo kind of thing.
Yeah, it was great. I was impressed.
I don't know what I said, but, you did great. You still read it right off the paper. You did fantastic.
My knees were knocking. I was shaking.
She even went off script at one point.
I did.
Ooh, dangerous.
That was crazy.
Dangerous.
That is so... I did not expect that at all. But, I went off script just to say...
It was like the Southpaw rock moment. Like out of the blue, Bingo's going off script and riffing.
No, let her go. Let her go. Let's see where it goes.
But she's riffing. Because it was about Whiskey Girl and Nowhere Man.
Well, I felt like when I was up there, I had Bisbee all in a room, and they were supportive, and it was cool. But I wanted to tell them that I spent the last day with Derek before he killed himself, and that I always felt like a suicide note of his. Like I should have been sharing what that day was like. With people, with Bisbee especially.
Because after she died, he came right back here, and it was just you two at the house.
Derek came to spend the time with me, and then he killed himself. But I knew what state of mind he was in. I knew everything that he said right before I did it. I knew everything, and I don't know what they think, but I know that they would probably want to know that day because we weren't wasted. I don't know if people think we were drunk.
Well, we were gone, so you were at the house.
It was only me and Derek the whole day. And it was a brilliant day. I know exactly what state of mind he was in when he did it. I know how planned out it was. I know everything. And I always thought that that maybe Derek would have wanted me to share that with people, with Bisbee especially, like I said. So I had Bisbee all in a room, and so I just said, I'm ready to talk about it. And if you have any questions about, I just said I'm ready to talk about it now. I just don't know how to start. So if you have any questions about it, please ask, and I will do my best to answer on behalf of Derek. And so I said that and then introduced the video.
Did anyone ask questions afterwards? Because we didn't do a Q&A on stage. You didn't want to go
say,
that.
No, we didn't want to
No,
do
but
that.
there was like a vodka social afterwards over one of the rooms there. So did anyone know?
No, I was still kind of to myself. I didn't socialize all that much.
You didn't sell merch?
No, I didn't sell merch. But yeah, I was terrified
Get
up there.
your
but I think
bullet hole necklaces.
Yeah. I wore my bullet hole necklace there.
Yes. Bingo cut out the bullet. You explain it because you're wearing it.
Yeah. I always wear it. Well, the bullet hole is in the wall, and I was just overprotective of this bullet hole for some reason. I don't understand why, but I didn't want anybody to fuck with it.
And I did.
It's okay. I don't want to talk about that. It'll fucking make me crazy. But, so finally.
I didn't stick my dick in it or anything. I just tried to have it fixed, and then she went mental.
Well, not all the way.
No. But,
Not that caliber is beneath me.
I'm more of an exit hole kind of a guy. Wait, no, that's not it. That doesn't sound right.
Hello. Tobacco Road.
but
I
when,
want to get a tattoo over my
Dude,
ass that says entrance only.
with a lube dispenser mounted above it.
Just that I'm against shitting. Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, back to your dead friend story.
Sorry.
All right.
Wrap it up. Another wrap it up signal.
So when I was ready, I cut the bullet hole out of the wall, and there was a piece of material in between the drywall. So I have the bullet hole as a pendant that I wear around my neck.
Well, yeah, you had something formed out of the bullet hole in turquoise.
Yeah.
You can't have actual holes. I'm just trying.
No, it's
No,
like,
this is the bullet hole right here.
Yeah, I know, but there's
Section of
turquoise
wall.
in where.
Oh yeah, I just
Yes.
I
You
put
took
turquoise behind it, and that's.
You pulled out the section of the wall with the bullet hole, had a mold of that made, and now you wear it on a.
No, it's not a
No,
mold.
that's
honey.
the act-
This
that's
is
the
actually
material.
the material that was in the wall.
Oh, there's something behind it. I
yeah,
get you.
it was
All right.
in between the drywall.
All right.
So that's what I had.
it's got to look
pendant made.
stylish.
Yeah.
A little turquoise.
Yeah. So that's what I wear.
I have a
wear
feeling
around my
this.
neck.
I knew with Electric Dave coming in that this is at least a 2-parter, but with this, it might be a 3-parter. I feel that because I had the fucking booze shakes today coming into
yeah,
this.
you did.
So just trying to cram all this stuff and actually getting nervous and and drinking coffee, which I can't do with a fucking alcoholic nervous system. Caffeinated coffee and just trying to jam all this mother stuff out, fight for a title. Should I even give out the title that I want? Because
No.
it's for sale right now on...
No, because then there'll be another book for sale on Amazon with the other title.
This title, if you can use this...
You should wait.
All right, I'll wait.
You should wait, honey.
I at some point, I go, well, if the publisher gives me enough shit, maybe I have to release the Hounds. Get the Killer Termites
Yeah,
to go. We
you
like this
definitely do
fucking
that, too,
title.
but-
Wait
Yeah.
for that. We got months to
Yeah.
go
But
here.
the thing is, I'm sure the publisher does not want this just to be selling to my fans. In fact, they're kind of almost open about that. They want chicks to buy this book. So,
Well,
so maybe the Killer Termites is the worst idea. But yeah, I gotta fight for a title. Anything other than the working title. But you can still pre-buy it as One Funny Mother on eBay. I mean, eBay. Fucking Amazon. Pre-order it. They have a fake cover and a fake title.
No, I do have a
But
signed,
it is a real book.
I do have a signed one on eBay. So there is one link. That link will be in the show notes.
All right, we will be back. Oh, wait, are you... Anyway, bingo. I didn't know if did I just roll over you?
No, it's okay. It was good. Yeah.
All right, good.
So are there any speaking engagements coming up? Maybe a city council meeting or?
Fuck no. No. That
An
was,
open mic somewhere?
I'm done for a while.
All right, let's pour more heavy cocktails and
Sounds good.
We'll be back with Electric Dave and Tales of...
Tails.
Yes.
Just
fucking-
tails. Just tails.
Electric Dave has... he's the Bisbee get. Where Stern would be impressed when he gets Paul McCartney. I have the Bisbee get.
Oh, wow.
In fucking Electric Dave and Cedric after these cocktails on the Doug Stanhope Shot Clog Podcast. The Shot Clog Podcast where the drinks are always free. Hey, UK merch is on sale. Where? In the UK? No, just on the website. Can't deal with all those problems with selling merch in the UK, but you can get UK t-shirts on the website at DougStanhope.com and posters. We have, Jim Ether's doing posters too? We got posters. We have t-shirts. We have everything you need to go out in public naked. A poster to cover your genitals and a t-shirt to cover your voluptuous man top. And go to DougStanhope.com and look for the merchandise page. My World Tour. Asterisk. Places that speak English that will still book me. Yeah.
So, Dave, you
I
want
have
to be
a
about
feeling
that
this
far
is
away
going
from
on.
it?
Like that
Yeah.
far? Okay.
It's just
Tilt it
that.
up.
Is that the right angle?
Tilt it up.
Well, you can tilt it up a little bit, but it's a directional
Okay,
right
so
on the
it's right
front.
there.
So
Okay.
imagine, yeah.
And the closer you get to it, the warmer the sound. Just so you know.
Imagine yourself as taking the load for the money shot.
Okay. Now
To
we're
save
talking
the
like-
world.
Yeah, if
Save the
you were
world.
on YouPorn and the chick, you can tell when the chick obviously aims it down a little bit and accidentally misses her mouth. First of all, that fucking disgusts me. Like, I wish there was a way you could non-search on YouPorn where you go, don't take it in the face because it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And ugh, I don't want to gag while I'm coming.
That and the
ah.
up close gynecological exam type views of, like, look, I'm spreading this open and the camera almost fits in there. Like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, just shoot it on her belly, and
Is there
that's because
any
that's what I'm
settings?
doing.
Wow, looks like you have diverticulitis.
T.O. said he's for the beer.
They probably
Always.
do after all that
It should be
action
in the
back there.
fridge. I didn't know till after I bought
Get
the
a
T.O.
stick in the
Setties
mouth.
that you're
That stuff's
supposed to
gotta go
refrigerate
somewhere.
it. It looks like it lasts forever.
I-
We are on the air, by the way.
We have to refrigerate that stuff?
Well, he said, you probably might want to. But they say that about Bailey's and
I leave it in
Kahlua.
my house, and it gets to 110 in my house, right? I live in an Airstream. It's like a solar heated oven.
Cedric and Electric Dave, who built this bar, they built this city on rock and roll. Yeah, I very excited to finally get you on. I want to hear, because you just segued in the break into your City Hall story.
Well, right. And I have to say, it's incredibly terrifying to talk in City Hall because you go up there and talk about stuff that is mostly political, and these people have no sense of humor, and they actually basically have no sense, basically. They have, you go up there and it's like, the only person you can see that has any sense of humor might be the cop, who's maybe the guard for the whole thing.
I
right?
have made him laugh, Coronado. I made him laugh
Yeah,
once,
he
and it
actually
was
has a
just
sense
at
of
my
humor.
suit. Like when he's behind you, because when you speak at City Hall, he's behind you, and he always looks grim. He always looks like he's about to cuff you. But in the hallway out front, just because I was wearing a toupee and a weird suit, I got him to laugh.
Yeah, he has a little bit of a sense of humor, but none of the other people that work
No.
there. I mean,
Ugh.
Gene's not here, so we can say that, but they have no sense of humor because, Gene
Well,
doesn't
Gene
drink.
tries to have a straight face, too. When he does have a sense of humor, I know he's trying not to laugh, which that's not what you want in an audience, especially when you're...
Hurtley's cracked me up many times.
early, yeah.
inadvertently.
Inadvertently, exactly. And then when I was bartending at the Alamos on Tuesday nights, several of the members of the city council used to come in and drink afterwards, right? Which was how I got all my political knowledge. But we kept the bottle of pink wine refrigerated for one of those members of the council, and I was like, "Really, what is this thing doing down here?" It's like, oh. Then I found out there's one person who drinks it, right?
Yeah, we had a former mayor who'd come over after meetings, and they would act like I don't normally have more than one, but I guess I could have one more. And I don't normally smoke cigarettes, but I guess I could try one.
That was Tom, huh?
Yeah, that was a gender neutral rendering.
Okay.
So Electric Dave. Now, I read that someone put out, and I think it's a fantastic book, even though it's awkwardly edited. I think gives it charm. Have you listened to? Maybe you were on it. I know you're mentioned a lot in it. It's a 12-hour audio book of the People's History of Bisbee.
No, I don't think I did that. No.
All right. I think her name's Susan Wilde. If I would have researched it if I knew I was going to be bringing it up. But it's a People's History of Bisbee, and it's a lot of the colorful characters of Bisbee telling their tales all the way from the old mining days and the deportation all the way up through.
They're still alive?
This, what's the Scott, Benny Scott. He's still alive. He remembers a lot of that shit.
Actually, some of them are older.
Really remembers that.
Well, not the deportation, but they talk about it. They know about it.
He doesn't remember my name, you know.
Sometimes that's a good thing. He's a former cop. You don't want him knowing a lot of shit.
Oh no, it was great. He came in on us one day when we're doing coke and we're drinking shots, right? And knock on the door, bang, bang, bang. Come on in, right? Benny Scott walks in. We got the tray out there. We're smoking a joint, shots right there. And Benny says, "You know what? I'm going to try that one more time." He goes back outside. We put the tray underneath the couch. Bang, bang, bang. Come on in, right? And then we're just sitting there, right?
Yeah, I've had nothing but fantastic experiences with
No,
Bisbee
he's actually
police.
a pretty cool guy.
And
when he was a cop, he was way fun.
Well, he said that on this People's History of Bisbee about how drugs and there was people that did drugs, and I feel like that's your own business. But when it got to then it got into now with methamphetamine, which is even split me away from the legalized drugs a bit.
It's just not a very social drug, right?
Yeah, it ruins people.
Yeah.
And there's no benefit to it. Alcohol at least makes you funnier. Yeah, meth is a horrible drug. And that's...
Then people just wander around the house, walking into walls and babbling and then walking to the next room, but you can't even have a conversation with them, right?
Yeah, or each other.
I would say still, meth affects people different because I'm a better person on methamphetamine. I'll do chores, I'll think about people, I'll have hygiene, I'm a whole different person on methamphetamine. The problem is that it has such fucking wreaks havoc on your body, and it's fucking.
I fucked with it back
horrible
when you
drug.
just snorted it, just a little bit, but you immediately, as a young 23-year-old, 22-year-old, after one 12-hour binge, you feel like your bones are rotting, and I could never imagine people getting addicted to that. This is fucking awful.
Yeah.
But you're a different person, and you're not sitting there smoking it out of a glass pipe in a corner, seeing spiders, and Well, I don't know what you do.
Part of that would be true. I've smoked it in a glass pipe in a corner, but like I said, it just makes me feel like a regular person. I care about stuff.
I was worried about you doing
pretty
shrooms at one of those podcasts.
Yeah, I know you were.
Yeah, but
rightfully so.
Yeah.
I'm an unstable guy. I know that.
But yeah, you made you all fucking chipper, and we'll try to get you some mushrooms for when you're guest hosting for me while I'm away.
As long as I just eat a few, I'm good.
We'll have a nurse Chaille just meet them out to you and check under your tongue.
I've got several requests from people on Twitter that say, "Yeah, do the podcast, but only if you're on shrooms."
So after listening to that book, once it got into the hippie era, which is around when you came here, you're 58 now, you say?
Yeah, I moved here in late 77, I think.
All right. I don't know where to start.
Way too long ago.
Well, because you started to tell me your NYU story.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from New York City, right? And then I went to I got expelled from high school in 11th grade, and I got
For what?
I think it was during the Vietnam War, and I was a little too political and stuff like that. And it was a private high school, and we're supposed to wear like school uniforms, right? But basically, I just cut the collar off my white shirt and cut the tie like right here, and then I put it underneath my sweatshirt and wear that to school. And
You get expelled for that?
well, I think because I was on a scholarship to high school, and the school was going out of business, that they just cut me free, right?
Political reasons. It's all political.
But being expelled for like making a false dickie.
Exactly, a false dickie, right? And I thought it was funny, but apparently not. But I got expelled, and then I got a full scholarship to NYU that summer, so that worked out pretty well for me. And I went to school when I was 16, and I was sitting in the classes at NYU, and you could smoke back then in the classes. And I sat next to this really hot chick, blonde chick, and she would smoke those French cigarettes all the time. And, you know, it was just way fun for me because I'm like 16. I was riding my bicycle. I was riding my bicycle through Midtown Manhattan to get to NYU, right? Hanging on the back of buses, right? You know. But, yeah, that was a long time ago. And then, but I did have a good job with the cable TV scene back then. We're doing a teleprompter cable, which was a public access TV in New York City at the time. And at the time, it was public,
Late 60s?
it was the early 70s. And they were trying to establish, public standards for pornography, I guess, or what obscenity was, I guess. So Time
Lenny
Warner,
Bruce days.
the Lenny Bruce, Time Warner.
Prurient interest. I still can't say that word.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it, right? But the Time Warner owned the company at the time, and they wanted to push the stuff to see at what point they were going to get sued so they could establish what prurient interest was, and then they could make that line, right? But in reality, it's very difficult. So we had Al Goldstein had a show on called
Al Goldstein owned Penthouse magazine.
Screw magazine.
He had Screw magazine.
I heard someone.
Oh, that was the other guy. Forget his name. Italian guy.
Yeah, Italian guy with an Italian name. Yeah, Al Goldstein had Screw magazine of the air.
It was like the Mad magazine of porn.
Yeah, it was. It was like a joke. Everything was a joke, right?
But he was very outspoken about free speech.
He was.
He was always at any event. He used to go on Howard Stern a lot.
And he was always about free speech, exactly.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting shot for that, right? You know, but the whole thing was, yeah, so we had the Midnight Blue, and he would do the really obscene stuff, right? I think I was 16. I was the cameraman, you know, and we do the studio shots, like we'd have the pubic haircuts and stuff. You have some gay guy giving this chick a pubic haircut and stuff. And I'm in there, everybody's got the cameras on the dollies, but I got the portable camera on my shoulder. I'm down there on the floor, right? Just like now they do. It's like
Trying to hide your wood because you're 16.
I'm
You
16, you know.
So yeah, you're crouched down, A, for the angle, and B, to hide the boner.
And no one asked me how old I was. It's like, yeah, you know, what the hell, right? You know, so that was a good show. And then we had some really evil stuff on there. Like because they were trying to really get sued, right? That was the whole point, right? So we had this guy called Ugly George, right? And he'd stand there with a porta-pack, and back then the porta-packs were these reel-to-reel things, right? And he'd stand there in Times Square, and he would go and just have it on the thing on. He'd go up to girls and say, "Hey, you want to fuck? You want to fuck?" And then he'd get eventually after about
It's the
50,
original Bang Bus.
Yeah, I watched that on YouPorn.
yeah, on the
Good work,
after
good work.
The 50th girl, he'd get some girl in some alleyway, and she'd give him a blowjob, and he would videotape it, right? It was so we called him Ugly George. It was horrible, right? You know, it was so demeaning, and it was just like, but.
For who? Wait, for which one? The gal? Was it demeaning for her or for Ugly George that you were...
No, it was demeaning for me to have to edit this material.
Hold on, I'm writing down demeaning as a search term on YouPorn.
The unknown soldier of porn.
Then we'd have to put these half-hour shows together, right, with this sequence of Ugly George and stuff, and then the pubic haircuts and whatever else we were doing and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff they had pre-made, and then we would bring it in. But Al was always trying to make it the most offensive thing you could do. And then, I don't know, I don't remember if we ever did establish what prurient standards were.
So I'm just going to tease my listeners. This does drift into drug smuggling and prison event, but I'm slow burning this motherfucker.
I got what I deserved eventually, yes.
What? So you did you graduate NYU?
No, of course not. All right, I left after about a year because I didn't want to stay in New York City. I was only 16. I wanted to get out, and so when I was a kid, I said, I never want to leave New York. It's the greatest thing in the world. And as soon as I left, I said, fuck this. I'm not going back.
Exactly.
So
how I felt leaving the East Coast.
Right. Then I went upstate New York, went to school, did a bunch of stuff up there, and then eventually worked my way over to San Francisco and then ended up in Bisbee, where I retired.
Hitchhiking, I assume?
I hitchhiked, yes, all over the U.S. and Canada.
Just assume was the major form of travel before 1980, was just hitchhiking.
Exactly. It was great until like 1975, and then it got to the point where everybody I got picked up with some kind of pervert, right? But before that, it was smooth sailing. And it happened every time I went through Knoxville for some reason, and then I said, so I just got out of this car with this guy that's got the little baby, pictures of little kids with big dicks on them, and he's got the boys' underwear over the stick shift, right?
Shit. And it's back when you're proud to be a pedophile.
And this guy was maybe
from your rear view mirror.
This guy's maybe 300 pounds, and we're in these. And back then, those little Jap trucks were kind of new, right? So we're in this little Jap truck. I'm squeezed in there with this guy, and it was just hideous, right? And so I finally get out of there. I said, okay, the next fucking ride
Are we going to get more email from Japanese people or Knoxville perverts?
Forget fat people.
Oh, yeah, those two. Yeah. I don't know what it was about Knoxville, but I started to dread going up Highway 81, hitchhiking up the East Coast, and I'm like, oh, fuck Knoxville, right? So I said, if I get out of this ride alive, I'm going to just get a next ride. Take me to the bus station, right? But then I get picked up by this cute girl with this giant German Shepherd sitting in between us in the front seat. I said, this is such a relief, right?
Oh, that doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
No, it doesn't go anywhere.
I thought
no.
you were teasing
Thank
us.
God.
I thought Al Goldstein was going to pop up with a camera. See what she does to the German Shepherd.
Yeah, I didn't check out the German Shepherd. I was just so relieved to get out of that other car.
I'm writing cute girl and German Shepherd as a U-porn search term.
Invariably, the German Shepherd comes in her face. Like, why always the face? Why in the mouth? Why do you have to show me that on your tongue? That's like hearing someone cough up a fucking loogie, and you're waiting for him to swallow it, and you're like, do something with that. That's what, the jizz shot in the mouth, that's what it does to
I
me.
think those are illegal now, those ones, yeah.
I don't...
Nothing's illegal. Look at
illegal.
Prurient.
we haven't figured out Prurient. What?
Prurient.
Prurient?
It's fucking impossible to say.
That's why no one can figure out what it is, right?
It's so let's get to Bisbee. Wait, no, San Francisco. You went there. Of course, you have to go there in the 70s.
You have to go to San Francisco. I lived on the corner of Haight and Ashbury above the jewelry store, in the apartment up there with a couple of my college roommates, and then and I was
That's
down.
a fucking. I played a club on the Haight and Ashbury Club Deluxe in San Francisco. We got 60 or 70 seater several years ago. And you go, oh wow, times haven't changed, but these are fucking young.
It's a scuzzy neighborhood.
It's fucking ugly as shit.
It's ugly.
Was it ugly back then?
Yeah, it was ugly. It was a bunch of street people and stuff. And actually, my friend Loki from Bisbee, I met him up there in Golden Gate Park because I was selling LSD, and I think he was selling mescaline. And we ran into each other really high, and we traded it. But we were both initially afraid of each other because we were afraid we were going to rip each other off, right?
Doing that thing. All right, you hand it to me at the same time I hand it to you.
I was thinking of Reese's peanut butter cups. You got your mescaline in my LSD.
Exactly. But then Loki was the only person I ever knew from a previous life that I later met in Bisbee.
That's great.
One day I walked into the Alamos. He was sitting at the bar. I said, "Oh, finally,
Those fucking moments in life. That's what you live for. That's why I have Facebook. Just to run into some random person. There's one guy in the book, Keith Kingsbury, that I know he's probably in prison or a plumber. So it probably wouldn't be. But just those random, like, fuck. I remember. I sat at a bar. Where were we? In Chattanooga, Tennessee. Down the street from
down
the
the
perverts.
street, exactly.
And
Are
I
you
sat
sure?
drinking with a guy for all afternoon. And then at some point, he said, what do you do? And I had to say I'm a comedian because I didn't have a lie in my pocket ready. He's like, what's your name? And I said, Doug Stanhope. He's like, oh, fuck. He was at the Ginger Lynn porn poker party. He was the bouncer. Like, he goes, yeah, I think he might have been the guy that procured us products.
That's what bouncers are for, right?
Yeah, and gave us rides. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the stuff you do. We treated us like real titty dancers. Anyway, back to
Anyhow, so
Loki.
Then I ended up in Bisbee. I drove my Volkswagen that I drove it down to Bisbee and,
Why Bisbee? Because this is
okay.
this is the bad local interview question.
Right.
Is how did you wind up here?
I was in San Francisco and I said, well, you know what? I grew up in New York City. I don't really want to be in another city. So I said, I think, so I had a couple of buddies of mine with me. And then, they were from upstate New York. And one of them said, I'd been in Tucson before. So we went down to Tucson and we got there in one afternoon and they said, fuck this. We're going back to San Francisco. So they got out and hitchhiked. And then I had this 64 Volkswagen Bug. And I said, you know what? I don't want to go back to San Francisco. So I poured concrete on day labor in Tucson with a bunch of Mexicans. I was the only white guy in the crew, which they ridiculed me. And, you know, I lied to get the job because I really had never poured concrete.
How
right?
old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm 20 at this point, right?
Right.
So, and
Did you lie and say you were Mexican? I don't
No,
understand. why you had to
I
lie
lied and said I could pour concrete.
Sounds like you were going to be a manager until you opened your fucking mouth.
But they kept me on because, you know, I was willing to wade through the concrete with the tamper and stuff in my shoes, right? You know, and then, so then I was camping on Mount Lemmon and I met this guy. I heard.
This is back. Keep in mind, this is back in a day where hippies worked.
Exactly, right? We had to, yeah. It was before food stamps. No, not quite, but anyhow, I was living on Mount Lemmon and ran into this other I heard 4th Avenue was cool, so I said, I'll go down to 4th Avenue on a Saturday night and see what's going on.
Tucson,
right? And I said, I got some LSD, maybe I can sell it, right? Not a chance, right? But I didn't.
Wait, let me back up. That's how you got your nickname, Electric Dave, because you did become an electrician for a while, and everyone gave you credit for being Electric Dave for that, but you were already...
I was already Electric Dave. That was just a coincidence where I became an electrician later on.
So it was for selling acid.
Nice.
Well, I already got the name. What can I do next?
Yeah, so I see this hippie walking down 4th Avenue. I said, this is boring down here, right? And I start talking to him. It turns out he lived on Mount Lemmon also, and he had some Quaaludes, right? This is back in the day when they still had those, right? So I think I bought them from him. I don't think he even wanted any of my LSD in trade, right? So I got the Quaaludes, and then he happened to be camped up near me, so we camped out together. Then we went down to Mount Wrightson to go camping, and he says, you belong in Bisbee. And I said, really? I said, okay. And so I left and I went to Bisbee and pulled into Bisbee in my Volkswagen and lived with a couple different communes. I moved into a commune right away, right? You know, and then
They're well documented on that People's History of Bisbee, so I know what you're talking about.
I lived in the Mays house, right?
Just for the listeners, Bisbee at that time in 75, the mines closed, so everyone fled and all the property values dropped. One thing I picked up from that book that I didn't know, because everyone in town brags about how they moved here in 78 and bought a house for $1,200. Well, these were fucking miners' shacks. Yeah. So all these stories I hear about $1,200 houses, no one ever says, well, we had no plumbing or electricity. We shit in a hole in the back. The roof was falling in. But you could still, for a fucking young hippie kid.
You could get lucky because that one guy, he and his wife, they were here and they were going to leave. And then he went out for a walk and came home. He had bought a hotel for $19,000, like a 20-some room hotel right in the Gulch that he bought. And then they stayed, and that was it. But I mean,
well, that could happen. And
yeah.
Then, so I was living in upstate New York before I went to San Francisco, and then I came to Bisbee, and then it's wintertime in Bisbee, and I'd been living in upstate New York in a $60 a month condemned building, right? And then I come to Bisbee, and I said, well, it's Arizona, right? What the fuck, right? But I'd never been so cold in my life that first winter in Bisbee because I was living in the house where it was a miner's shack, but the walls were shored up with cardboard to cover. You could see the outdoors, right?
Was it corrugated tin on the outside?
No, corrugated tin on the roof, and it was the 1x12s on the wall with a batten board. But they were like falling apart. You could see outside, and the wind's blowing through your house. And Well, this is another commune I lived in, but I'd never been so cold in my life. And I just lived in upstate New York for a winter with in an old condemned building, right? So I'm in Bisbee. I said, I can't believe it, right? This is not the way it's supposed to be. Not what I expected anyhow. But yeah, so these are the houses that went for $200, $1,200.
Yeah.
I think I paid $2,000 for my house.
Hey, what was the bathroom like?
I
Sunken
don't recall
tub?
that there was
Sunken
a bathroom.
tub?
Oh no, that was in Zacatecas. There was an outhouse. Yeah.
This is in the years before toilet paper.
Yeah, newspapers.
You wiped your ass on a bum.
The Douglas Dispatch, I believe. Yeah, the newspapers.
So, because I want to know when you first met Margot. Did you know her back then?
I did know Margot. I can't remember when I first met her.
We've had her on the podcast, and she's got great stories, and I imagine you two like being partners in crime, even though I know that
We've done some stuff in Mexico together and stuff, and then...
we'll get to that.
But, I don't know. Margot is a classic... she's a classic lady.
Someone said they just found old pictures of her.
I did.
Yeah.
She posted it. I think it's her banner shot on Facebook.
All right.
And it's you don't expect to see something like that. No. This isn't bad. Yeah. This is just her much younger. Yeah. And probably in the in between time of the stories we heard of her moving around a lot because she was
like beautiful.
Yeah, she was good. She was tall. She was like 30. I met her 39 years ago or something.
We
like
have
that,
to do the
she's pretty good looking, right?
Hapless addendum of she's still a handsome woman today at 75. Yeah, but you're not searching her right now on YouPorn. Let me just say that.
And she doesn't drink like she used to.
Au contraire.
No, really, she doesn't.
Oh wow.
That's why we haven't had her back on the podcast. All right, so now you're 20 years old.
Living in Bisbee, yeah. And
the heyday of Bisbee.
And the communes, right? And the Elmos was still the same. Actually, it was way more happening back then because all the other bars were closed. The Elmos was like the only real bar going on at the time. The Copper Queen was it was still open, and it did some good stuff.
Elmos is the bar in town. If you want to get into a fight, you go to Elmos.
We had fights every weekend back then, Fridays and Saturday nights. The Mexicans versus the hippies. The miners versus the hippies. And it was all kind of semi-racial.
And then miners and whoever wins miners and hippies goes up to
it's around Robin.
Mexicans.
Yeah, it's all weekend long.
And then there was also, we had, even back then, we had a big gay population. So that was also in there, too, in the mix. The Elmos was great because you had to share the bar. Since it was the only real bar in town, you had to share the bar with everybody. And so you got to know everybody pretty damn well, right? So it's a totally cross-cultural experience, right?
Kind of a subtly tolerant intolerance, like an underlying intolerance that had to tolerate each other.
You all hated each other, but you'd still play pinball or something together.
You always hated one group more than the other.
It's almost like comedians, where I hate your act, but I hate the audience more, so let's fucking hang out and get rid of these douches.
But, people would throw, pool balls around in the bar and cue sticks, and then we had a baseball bat behind the bar at the Elmos, right, to deal with stuff.
You had to rent it out like a good cue?
You had to, actually, the bartender had to guard it with his life.
What, was Buzz at the Elmo back then? Or?
Buzz was not at the Elmos, but Dan Oldfield was a bartender back then. And I saw Dan jump over the bar twice, just when I was there. He'd put one hand on the bar and leap over that bar to beat somebody down that was one of the customers and take him out the door, right? We had bartenders, and this is when I later on bartended there, I always this was my model, because we had bartenders that would get so fucked up, their eyes would cross, and they'd be fucked up more than the customers. So it was always an influence on me when later on I bartended there. I said, I'm never going to be more trash than my customers. And I kept it to a minimum. Just a couple times it happened.
Well, that's what because I have an audience that are, my fan base are legendary drunkards. And that's pretty much where I try to keep it. Don't be drunker than the audience. Because they'll get drunk and fuck with you. That's why I don't do 2 shows in a night. Because I can only get drunk with one crowd. If you're all getting drunk together, eventually you're all going to be assholes. But if you do it at the same time,
you don't know.
You're brilliant. No one's going, you fuck, Jesus, look at you.
And then the next shift comes on, you're trash. Right
We
there.
did that to Russian Butters' evil twin that came over the other night, and he was just so fucked up, and he was adamant on driving, and he's like 21 or 22, shouldn't have even been here. I'm like, go get his fucking keys. You can't let that kid walk out of here. And then I'm going to walk back to Palominos. 19 miles with
away.
no sidewalk in the desert at night.
No lights.
I'm like, we have fucking open beds. Just lay down. And we had to talk him down and watch him for so long that at the end, we're completely more shit-faced than this kid is. Like,
Is he really related to Butters?
no, he looks just like
look-
an evil. He looks like a Russian version of Butters. It's very funny. Evil Butters, Russian Butters. But point being, back to the story.
Back to the story. And what are we up to now?
Well,
Oh.
I know.
It's hard to condense it all. I mean, I'm like, usually
I guess
flow,
everyone
right? You know?
dealt drugs back in those days.
Well, that's what you did.
if you
because
didn't paint.
What happened when people come to town all the time, right? And they'd come to the Alamos and they'd say, we want to buy 500 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever, right? So,
Whoa. What?
yeah.
They'd go to Elmo's to buy 50 pounds of weed?
Marijuana, yeah.
It was the new Wild West. All the miners had fled.
There was only one bar, right? I mean, so
The town was completely depressed. It's listen to Billy Joel, Allentown, and
predated
catch up.
that, yeah.
Come for the drugs, stay for the weather.
so there's no one. Yeah, there's nothing going on except all this influx of hippies and druggies and artists.
And people would come to the Alamos because they were looking for weed. And,
Wholesalers.
yeah, and they'd come in from out of state and they'd drive in
Or
with
out
their-
of country because
out
of
of-
proximity to the border.
No, well, most of them.
No, that's the wrong way.
They were bringing it the wrong way. These are guys driving in with like Lincoln Continentals with like Wisconsin plates and stuff like that, right? And they come in and they say, hey, I want to buy 50 pounds. And I'll just go up to the first guy at the bar, right? And so he'd say to the next guy, hey, you know, who's got 50 pounds? And he said, oh, I think I know someone. And he'd say, hey, who's got 50 pounds? And then at the end of the day, when the guy would show up, or me or whatever, would show up with the 50 pounds. Everybody at the bar would make $5 on each pound, right? So, you know, it would just increase the price, right? You know, so, you know, whatever, because the people from out of state didn't know how much it cost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think back then,
Wisconsin, they'll
Yeah.
take whatever you got at whatever price, right?
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, it was like, you know,
Well, they're not afraid to go ask the next guy. That's one
Yeah,
good
there's a
thing
whole
about
bar.
it.
There's a
actual
every
wholesale
stool
price.
is full at this bar.
The wholesale price was $25
They have
to
little kiosks set
$50,
up.
right? But the real price that it actually sold for was hundreds of dollars, right? Or maybe back then, yeah. I can't remember back then,
Still
but
a healthy markup.
a healthy markup. I think because if I was paying $25 and selling it for $150 or something like that, or $200, or you know, but actually the price went up pretty rapidly, and it peaked around $500, $600, and then it's declined as far as I know. I really don't know how much it costs now, but I've been out of the business for quite a while.
For good reason.
Well, what do you want to know? 500 pounds or 1,000? Because the kids usually get 1,000 when they.
yeah. No,
Oh, well, I know
the holidays are coming up, so maybe 2,000 pounds because you can't forget the in-laws.
It's
you
not
know?
like it's going to sit in your
Exactly,
closet.
right.
Come on.
I once bought 2 pounds, but I didn't get a price break, so I don't know if I'll be out.
Well, a lot of people don't give price breaks. They don't understand
Baker's
that
dozen.
concept. They're not from New York, right?
So this starts shortly after you moved here.
No, I think I moved on to that stuff. And, I know. I had straight jobs for a while. I worked at the radio station, though you can't tell because I'm a little nervous behind the microphone, but you know, I did that, and I was an electrician for a zillion years.
Nervous behind the microphone is when you yell in a high-pitched thing like this because
Yes.
you don't trust yourself to have a nice, natural conversation.
But, I don't know. I started doing, I was, in the late 80s, I wanted to do the,
Tracy, sorry,
Oh, I'm good.
our bartender left.
she's knitting. She didn't
It's
leave.
crocheting. There's a
Oh,
difference.
crocheting. Okay.
It's another 10 years before knitting starts. Then it's needlepoint. Then you're dead.
Chad, what are you drinking?
To men.
Vodka soda, something?
He's got it. He's on it.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't know. I was doing the Bisbee thing, and then working construction, working at the radio station, and then my buddy calls me from Mexico. He says, "Dave, I need you to come down here. You can make $500 a day down here, right?" And I said, "Oh, come on, right?" And then he says, "No, really?" And I said, "No, bullshit, right?" And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm a gardener," and I'm like, in Mexico.
What was his name?
I said, "What do you know about gardening, killer?" He says, "I just made it up, but these people are paying me $500 a day, right?" He says, "Come on down here." He says, "Because I used to do electronics work, so I go down there and I said, "Oh, I was working at the radio station, but every time I've had a straight job in my life."
Chad does a lot of electronics work when he's doing meth.
Well, yeah, exactly. The project
for him.
never get finished, right?
Who needs a broken toaster? Wait, Dave, what were you doing? Electric. Yeah. What were you doing at the radio station?
I was the midnight till 6 a.m. disc jockey.
On air, did you do any...
Bisbee.
In
a depressed Bisbee.
right?
No, I did it in Bisbee. I did
really?
a couple different... I did maybe 3 different radio stations in Bisbee. They used to be radio. It used to be an AM radio station.
Yeah, no, that's, again, in that book, and they talked about when the last advertiser finally pulled out.
Yeah, K-Sun, the last advertiser, because they had this guy that was doing he had a Mexican broadcasting program that he would do certain hours of the day, but no one spoke Spanish, so they didn't realize he was actually selling ounces of weed on the air. It was great, right?
It's fucking brilliant stories from.
But that was AM radio, 1230, I believe, K-Sun.
So you're doing construction and radio,
and I'm doing radio. I'm working at KZMK 92.3 or something, 90. I don't know, whatever. Bisbee, Arizona. Even though we broadcast out of Sierra Vista, we had a 50-watt transmitter on top of the divide because we had to limit the transmit power because we're so close to the Mexican border. So 50 watts, a little bit less than one of these light bulbs here. And then how many do you have here? Like 15 of them, right? So this is like a pathetic radio station. Yeah. And it's all playing top 40 music on several reel-to-reels that were like, it was all formula music, right? It was all, you had to have a program. You just punch the buttons, put the 2 tracks in, the tracks that you...
Carts,
yes.
Yeah.
And then you do that. And then, but then I worked the midnight till 6 a.m. shift. So we had another production studio. We had turntables in it, and I would bring all my records in there, and I would, no one's listening, so I'm playing whatever I want, right? I got in trouble once. I think the boss woke up in the middle of the night.
Captain Beefheart, let me guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it?
I saw Captain Beefheart at the Roxy back in L.A. back in the early 70s, I guess. But yeah, I had some Captain Beefheart, and then a lot of Frank Zappa and, Neil Young stuff, but not top 40 stuff, right? So I was cutting the top 40 shit. I was like, I couldn't handle it, right?
You start your shift and end your shift with what you're supposed to play, but
exactly.
in the middle, it'd be,
And then in the middle, by 2 a.m, when the only people that are listening are like night watchmen and stuff like that.
Out on your ass and they sold your day job.
So I'd play whatever I wanted because we had the other studio with the production studio that had turntables. I'd just go in there and cue everything up and then play that, and then it was more like an East Coast, I can't remember the formula they used to call it back then, but, adult contemporary.
That's AC. Adult
AC,
contemporary is still something, but that's not Captain Beefheart.
No, that's not. But this is from the 70s, right? But I did this into the mid 80s.
Where you're going to? Do you know the things that life is showing you? All right, sorry.
That's not Captain Beefheart, is it?
No, I was doing an adult contemporary from 1978 that I remember.
I saw the Captain.
I don't know if they called it adult contemporary back then, but there was some latitude when you knew, I used to work in radio also, when the program director or no one was going to be listening, you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. Because the only time it was that you got in trouble for saying fuck on the radio is if someone heard it.
Oh, I hope. Here she goes. I hope she's not going to fuck Ugly George. I hope she just blows him in an alley.
Actually, when I worked in upstate New York as a DJ, my first job, the first song I played was Sweet Virginia by the Rolling Stones. And then you had to log the obscenities. That's all you had to do, right?
Oh, so if they came back to you.
I had to scrape the shit right off my shoes. You had to write that down to what time you played it, right? That was the only requirement for the obscenities back then, but, in Bisbee, it was no big deal. Actually, my program director came on at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I knew he was definitely not up listening to my show because he was supposed to come on after me, and he was frequently late. So I would cover for him. I would just stop talking. I would play the actual program music,
Yeah, and then he'd
until
slip in.
7:30 when he would show up, right?
Out of the hippies, the bikers, the Mexicans, and the gays, which ones were the biggest fans of the adult contemporary channel?
Actually, I don't think anyone I knew listened to my program.
I was just thinking about that while you're
Chad
telling the
Shank
story.
with
Sorry.
with
I
the
don't think anyone
hard-hitting
listens.
questions.
Sorry about that.
Some guys working at the hospital all night listening to Douglas or something were listening to it. I worked at other radio stations at Bisbee where you're actually trying to give away free tickets. And so I'll take the 10th caller, and then an hour later, say, I'll take the 8th call. I'll take the damn
Any
first
caller.
caller.
Someone call me. I don't think my phone's working.
Pretending.
That's what it's like now. I did a evening radio after drive time, that next shift in Reno once, and the guy's doing, okay, it's a battle of the bands. We got this, whatever, I don't know if they're even local bands or new bands. And I did an hour of breaks with him, and he got one call after he's getting votes for the battle of the bands, and it was a personal call. Like, really? I fucking drove out of a casino off a roulette wheel binge to do this, to promote my show, and you can't get one fucking caller to vote on your battle of the bands?
Yeah, but that's what you have to do to promote yourself. It's a terrible thing.
No, you don't if no one's listening. It's just like saying
but you
cunt on the radio.
You have to
If
do it
no
100
one's-
times before you hit, right?
You have to imagine that
No,
there's
you
a-
have to not play Reno.
I love that the only call was, Ma, I heard you. I'll bring the milk home when I'm done with my radio shift.
Yeah, well, because now radio is a dead medium, right? Because now you're,
Yeah.
I mean, so finally, 'cause
Satellite and podcasts have
Podcasts.
taken over. Not mine, but
I hate to say the Bisbee thing. Like, I tried to help those fuckers in the Bisbee radio station and stuff, right? And I said, because my friend Lee Spinks, we used to work together in radio, and he started to start the Bisbee radio station, Cape Burp. I said, those are the worst fucking call letters I've ever heard, right?
I think it's fantastic. KBRP, K-Burp. It's fucking funny.
I forgot what it was.
Except they don't realize it, I'm sure.
Well, I don't think I even knew what they were talking about. I mean, like, don't you? It's K-Burp, right? So anyhow, and they have a nice thing going on now. But when they first started, it was like, it took them 10 years for them to get on the air. And I said, well, I built this little transmitter and I built this nice antenna. And I said, I could put you on the air tomorrow. And like, let's just go on the air pirate, right? Why not? Because that's what FM radio is closing down. They closed down the FCC monitoring station that was down in Douglas. They just shut it down because there was no one cared anymore, right? So they shut it down. And then the people were like, oh no, we're going to do it the right way. It took them 10 fucking years to get on the air, right?
Oh, now I got ideas. You got me at that perfect cocktail where we can do podcast and pirate radio.
Well, you can. I had a pirate radio station in my brewery. I built this giant fucking J-pole antenna out of copper tubing, and I had my little transmitter I built, and I played a lot of my old tapes and my old shows, and then I just had it on, just automatically playing all the time, and it went down as far as the Safeway, which is not that great, but
it's better than KBRP.
It's
Once you
better
get
than
past
KBRP.
you can't even get KBRP.
Were you down in the low frequency doing low power?
no, I was doing low power on FM. I was doing,
Yeah, but the low frequency on the dial.
I believe I was, no, I think, yeah,
Like in
I think
the
actually,
80s.
no, you're
You're
right.
in the
No,
80s, yeah.
I think I was doing in the lower frequencies because I think all public radio stations are supposed to be below 92.
No, that's where you fly low. That's because I was on a low power station in Alaska because a program director got fired, and then he figured out they released some bandwidth from UHF up in Anchorage, and they survived for a while. The station is now in a regular FM.
If this was Stern and I was in a car, I'd go, get back to Mexico.
Oh, well, no, I was just curious
who
because
listens to
you
FM
can-
radio? No one
you-
listens to radio anymore.
It's like
But you can
Electric Dave
exist
Radio,
down in-
15.6.
I'm talking about this show.
Oh, this
get
show,
back
yeah.
to when you go to Mexico to make $500 a day.
my point was that
I forgot about
Pretend I'm
that.
a caller.
the 80s in that frequency, no one's really paying attention, and it overlaps with UHF as well.
Because the FM frequency starts at 88, and then the lower end of that was reserved for public radio and
Yes.
stuff. And so there's only like one station that's broadcast on that, so you can use any of those frequencies.
Yeah.
But I put it on an empty band, and where people might be able to tune in, like, the Border Patrol guys might have been listening or
An
something.
FU band.
And what were you doing on pirate radio?
Just playing music and stuff, right? But it's unlike some of the other stations I worked on in Bisbee where they had cable radio stations, and I worked on them, and they said, well, we're going to play modern not modern jazz. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically Al Jarrett or something, right? I said, this is fucking pathetic. No one's going to listen to this shit,
Smooth jazz.
Smooth jazz. It's like, no one wants to hear this shit. It's like, why don't you just play Muzak, right? You know?
But since it's pirate radio, where you like,
Oh, that was a cable radio station. But I was doing pirate radio, and I never got any feedback on it. You know, I didn't care because
well, there's no way to get a hold of you. You're not doing seventh caller and giving away
exactly.
tickets.
I'm running on a 9-volt battery, right? Because it's only using like half a watt of power, right? You know,
touching your tongue to stay awake.
It's still working, right? Oh yeah.
All right, let's.
Okay.
I get a piss.
All right.
And we're gonna take a break and get back to Mexico and the drug smuggling. I assume.
Sure, we can do that.
Unless Chaille goes off into reading fucking VHS instructions again. We'll be back after this cocktail. Hey, I'm going to the UK and Europe. The dates are at DougStanhope.com. We're doing England, Scotland, Ireland, Denmark, Iceland, Amsterdam, Norway. I think we're even doing Sweden. Go to DougStanhope.com. But for the 5 weeks that I'm gone, there's no way I'm going to try to pack fucking podcasting equipment and trust Brian the filthy uncut Scotsman to do it. He can't beat Chaille. He will never beat Chaille. So my thought was to have Chad Shank fill in for me for 5 weeks and be my guest host of the Doug Stanhope podcast. Well, that's up to you, the listeners. If you'd like him to do that, tweet him at HDFatty, at HD as in Harley Davidson, Fatty, Fatty. And if more people want him to do this and he gets more tweets, it will affect his ego and make him smile more when he's trying to not kill people at home. All-star podcast, since you guys have bought those fucking football helmets or are buying those to pay for this. Coming soon, Andy Andrist and Christine Levine. Click.
Hi, this is Amy Bingo Bingaman, and you're listening to the Doug Stanhope podcast, brought to you by Cream Cheese.
All right, call me if you can't find it. Yeah. No, Dave's really boring and. No, it's very good. But.
Sorry, we were recording all that so people know all the hijinks we get up to on a break. I think it's on the counter. Honey?
You get the
I'll
best
be
stuff
late.
on that, right?
Dave, scoot up a little bit on your mic. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
you
eat
can
the
just
mic,
move the chair just so it's more
pirate radio
comfortable.
days.
I tend to slouch, right? So,
Yeah. Well,
especially the more I drink, right?
I slouch forward at a bar. I had this posture before it was legal to drink.
I've never fallen over backwards, but I can see it could happen when I get older, maybe.
God damn it! You just said something that I wanted to. Well, we're getting back to $500 a day in Mexico.
That's what it was, yes.
As I sit over a 1970s ashtray, this thing is filling up. Like
I know I haven't seen one of those
in
in a long time.
I know, but the amount of cigarettes too in it, it's going to start
Exactly.
spilling over.
No one does that anymore.
Is that real marble?
Are those real cigarette butts?
When I get a gift, I don't ask a lot of questions.
it's like an unattended casino ashtray.
And those are the only casinos I frequent.
But they don't put these kind of ashtrays out there because you could kill somebody with this,
Oh yeah.
like your dealer.
That's why we moved it in front of your seat and not Chad's. Speaking of killer,
I like
now
the way Electric Dave thinks.
we're segueing into
Mexico.
Killer the gardener, your
Killer.
buddy.
So Killer calls me. I'm working at the radio station. He says, Dave, we can make $500 a day. You come down here to Alamos, Sonora. I get you. I said, no, that's bullshit, right? But I said, on the other hand, I did mark my calendar, and the 6 months that I said I was working this straight job is almost up. So I said, okay, I'll come down there, right? So I go down there.
It's meant to happen.
It's meant to happen. So I quit the radio job because I've never held a job for more than 6 months unless I was incarcerated and they made me do it. But even with Cedric, maybe Cedric. No, I haven't worked for 6 months with Cedric. No, ever. So I've never held a job more than 6 months. So I go down to Mexico to Alamos and I start fixing electronic stuff. I'm fixing this electronic organ for this old guy, Pember, who's totally cool old guy who's a pharmacist, thank God. And, that married to the woman that owned the heir to the patio pool fortune, which apparently was a big fortune at one time.
Oh yeah, they still exist.
They still exist. And then Alamos, Sonora is this all Spanish mining town where they raped all the silver out of there and basically financed the whole Renaissance in Europe by taking all the silver out of the New World, which was Alamos, and then shipping it back in those galleons or something to Europe. And then they all spent it, and then the money got all passed around, and then whole Europe went through the Renaissance, and they fucking figured it out, right? They went from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, right? And it all came from Alamos, Sonora, which is a weird story, but
It's a brief history.
Yeah,
right?
I thought we were
That's a
moving
brief
forward
history,
out of Chaille's boring UHF stories and into and now you're going back to Spanish galleons.
oh yeah, okay. So anyway, I go to exactly. So anyway, I go down there, and these houses, the architecture's beautiful, right? So they're all because these really rich Spaniards had it, right? And then white people.
Didn't,
the
didn't movie
Spaniards-
stars and stuff move into
Yeah,
Alamos?
actually, the Spaniards are white people. I forgot that. Yes, but yeah. So yeah, and movie stars were there, and also the president, the guy they named the city after him. That wasn't Hermosillo. It was Obregon, General Obregon.
Bush.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
he lived there, right? And then
Sorry, I'm telling you to move back and take pictures from up high if you can do it.
my Mexican history is not that great, but anyhow, I go down there.
That's not what you're here for.
And this is Margot comes in at this point, right? So I go down to Alamos, and Margot's a real estate agent down there, right? But I go down.
You're imagine a conversation with you and Margot when you first met her. Say, "Hello, Margot. We're gonna role play." So, nice to meet you. What's your name? Say that.
Oh, hi, Margot. I'm Electric Dave, but you're from Bisbee, right?
Hi, Dave. I'm Margot.
I've heard about you, Margot.
What have you heard?
I heard that you're a real woman.
If you haven't heard Margot on the podcast, go back and listen to it because Chad, Shank, and Margot sound almost exactly alike.
I can actually understand what Margot says even when she's drinking tequila for an hour and a half, 2 hours, I guess.
If wishes were sailors,
Horses would ride. Or
No,
Now, Margot really is a woman. I've had friends tell me.
So, okay, you meet Margot.
So I go down there. Margot's a real estate agent. I'm down there with my friend Killer, who told me to come down. The gardener, the Gadna. They told me to come down there. And he's from Boston, right? He's ridiculous. He doesn't know anything about gardening, but he's got all these
You know more about a Boston accent than Ray Donovan casts combined. Go ahead.
So anyhow, he talked to all these people down there. He's basically entertaining them. They're paying him money to entertain them. And he does this, fucks around in their garden, putzes around and does stuff, right? So then he calls me because he says, Dave, this is the great entertainment show. Come on down here and you can fix okay, this one guy, Pember, wanted me to fix his electronic organ. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go down there. Fortunately, the thing is built in the 50s and the 60s. So it's still got individual transistors and stuff. You can actually unsolder them and put new ones in, and then, so I fixed it. It was no big deal. Then they wanted me to fix their satellite dish. And then that's kind of a little step up, right? But I said, okay. I go up there and I lay hands on the fucking thing and bend it around and point it the right direction. And suddenly it works, right?
Like
So
rabbit
now-
ears.
Yeah, exactly. So now
That
I'm
does sound
electronics.
complicated.
Yeah. Now I'm an electronics genius, right?
Yeah, you're like the guy from Idiocracy who comes from the past and what you do.
So, but they pay me $500 a day to fix the organ. But then when I actually produce results, they're like, want me to do all this stuff, right? And so then I'm very popular with all the gringo community down there. I'm making $500 a day. Killer was not kidding. I'm like, wow, I never would have believed you, Killer. You're just a fucking drunk from the Alamos, right? And you talked me into coming down here. So anyhow, we start smuggling satellite dishes into Mexico
Because you're an expert.
How do you smuggle a satellite dish? Just
Okay,
curious.
so
Not the same way
They
you do
were-
a
they were like
condom
6
full of
feet in
heroin.
diameter.
It hurts more, but
well, the
it can
problem
be
is
done.
that back then the satellite dishes, especially when you're down into Mexico, the footprint of the satellite is to the north, so you have to have a bigger dish in Mexico. So we're bringing these 12-foot satellite dishes into Mexico for the Mexicans that want us to do it, because now they heard the rumors how great, what gods we are with satellite dishes. So we're bringing these things down, and they're actually making them in Agua Prieta, which is in Mexico, but it's just right
on
here
the
by
other side of
Douglas,
Douglas, Arizona is the Mexican town.
And they're making these dishes, and they're these giant fiberglass, giant monstrosities, right? And with the Mexican electronics, because back then you couldn't bring electronics into Mexico. They were trying to have protectionist economics where you had to make everything in Mexico. So they had color TVs that still had wooden boxes and stuff around them, and, it was like some Mexicans made them that, but back then they weren't as good as they are now. Cause actually now all the modern TVs are made in Mexico, but back then they were the Mexicans designed ones, right?
How times change.
Exactly.
I love me a
Those were the days.
I love me a good wooden TV.
Exactly. A good wooden TV.
So you're bringing these
had the little
satellite
spinning tube. Yeah. So
the satellite dishes. How do you?
Okay. So,
as a legitimate question, how do you smuggle them? Do you say they're drive-in movie screens?
So I'm driving a '53 Chevy pickup, right, with a five window, right, and so we put the satellite dish in the back of. I pick up the satellite dish in Nogales, I believe, right? So they had it moved over to Nogales. So I picked it up there on the Mexican side.
Do they come apart, or are you like a
Yeah,
giant
they're both
flower
together,
running
but
down
they're
the
just
road?
giant petals that you
But
put together.
it's,
Right?
it's one at a time you're smuggling, right?
The whole dish.
One at a time, though.
Yeah, just one
You're
at a
not
time.
bringing in like
I have
a
a '53
container.
Chevy. We can't bring them.
I know. I'm just.
Go ahead.
So we go down there in the '53 Chevy. We pick up the satellite dish, and then it comes with this Mexican guy, right? I'm like, really? He has to go. He's going with the dish, right? I'm like, okay, what the fuck, right? Get in the truck, right? So we're going down, and we're in Nogales, and we hit the checkpoint there, 25 miles south. They said, no fucking way, right? I tell them some bullshit story. They said, get the fuck out of here, right? So we go back, and I'm in the parking lot there, and I start asking all the truck drivers, hey, how do you get around this checkpoint, right? And they said, oh, there must be a road from Cananea, right? And they said, no, yeah. So they tell me
this is before Trump built the wall.
Exactly. Before, the wall was
In case this goes out late.
The wall was a figment. The wall was something in someone's eye at that point, right? But the wall's the stupidest fucking thing in the world.
I don't want to get you off track.
Okay.
But you get turned around. You cannot pass.
So
right?
I find this dirt road to Cananea, from Nogales to Cananea, and there's this dirt road. So we go down there, the truck drivers tell me how to do it. So I go down there, we're like, fuck, we're doing great, right? And we hit this checkpoint. There's this guy in this little 12-foot trailer in the middle of nowhere, who's a federale, and his job is to guard this road, right? So he comes out, and he looks at it, and I said, oh, these are parts from my dad's boat. And the guy's like, oh, good. No fucking way, right? And I said, well, we got to take him down there. He says, no, you can't. You can't bring him through here. I said, how about all these Penthouse magazines? And the guy looks at it and says, no. And I said, how about, here's $100. He says, no. And I said, well, it's Cinco de fucking Mayo. Let us go. And he says, okay, but don't tell those guys, the army guys at the end of the road, that you came through my checkpoint. It was Cinco de Mayo. It just happens to be a coincidence, right? So
Penthouse magazine. Were you trading for double bubble gum?
Well, Penthouse magazine's always got me far in Mexico before, and this guy would not take a bribe. It was unbelievable.
I love that.
Stash of them in your truck.
This is a long time ago, right?
So
and the guy would not take a bribe. We're like, oh God, what? I finally found an honest Mexican cop.
So you get your delivery where it's going?
So we go through the checkpoint. He lets us through because it's Cinco de Mayo. He says, fuck it, just have a nice day. So we go down there. And so at this point, because I was Electric Dave, we all take LSD, right? And because we're like, oh, we made it, right? So including the Mexican kid that we brought with us, who we have no idea what he's saying.
Or why he's there.
Or why he's even here, right? But we give him some too. And then
you were the Knoxville to him. He's like, oh, God damn it. This guy has boys' underpants in the goddamn truck.
Exactly.
If you could only speak Spanish, you'd understand that he was trying to tell you, this satellite dish is broken.
Actually, it wasn't, thank God, because we went through all this trouble. So we get down there we take the LSD, and then we finally hit the road where it tees into the pavement, and we're all coming out of the LSD, and we're drinking Pacificos. Back then, it was legal to drink and drive in Mexico, right? So you could have. We're drinking Ballenas, which is a quart of Pacifico, right?
Tall boys,
like a 40,
a 32. There were 32s back then, right? So we all have 32s, and we come to this checkpoint, and there's all these guys, soldiers with M16s or whatever. Maybe M1s. They're antiques probably. So we pull up and they stop us And
Did they have a red cap in the barrel?
No, they did not. They actually had bullets in them, it turns
They
out.
make the toy sound. Brrrah, brrrah, brrrah.
So the guy,
Stop or I'll annoy you.
exactly. The guy,
I got you. No, you didn't get me. I got you. You're
I always
dead.
thought that.
Time out.
I always thought that was true, but not on this story. But another story, they actually do have bullets in them. But so the guy grabs my door and pulls it open, and my Ballena falls out and spills on his shoes. And I'm tripping at this point, right? Because it's been a couple hours on this dirt road.
Oh, and driving.
And driving, right? And my Ballena spills out in his shoes. I went, oh, fuck. And the guy looks up at me and he smiles. I said, really? Okay. So I got out of the truck and I walk around the truck and I'm showing him all the new rebuilt engine and the 5-window stuff. And it's like a 52 or 3, whatever it was. And he's like, yeah, I get to the point, right? And then, and he says, what is this?
I said, the car show.
I said, yeah, exactly. And so I said, entertain the guy, right?
Yeah.
So I said, this is, he says, what is this? This is parts for my dad's boat. And he's like, this is not a good story, apparently, because they all know what that thing is, right? Because Mexicans all lusting after satellite dishes at this point in mid 1980s, mid to late 1980s. They're all lusting after that satellite dish. They know what the fuck that is. So anyhow, the guy's like, oh, no. I said, well, I'm lost. I came on this dirt road. I'm trying to get back to the border. He says, oh, well, take a left here. We'll Escado, right? And I said, okay. And so we all get back in the truck and and the Mexican kids freaked out because the guys are all got guns and Mexicans are terrified of the Mexican cops and the federales because they get the shit beat out of them regularly, right? But white guys don't, so we have a free pass, right? So the guy
white privilege even exists in
sort of
brown countries.
Exactly. It was so bizarre. So we get back in the truck. We all wave goodbye. Thank you for the directions back to the United States. And I get in the truck and I was supposed to turn left. I just turned right and just fucking floored it and just took off. And I said, are they shooting at us yet? No, because we entertained them. They don't want to shoot you. Like if they like you, they're not going to shoot you.
Get to where you're going.
Oh, so we make it down there. We trade off the Mexican kid, get rid of him. He turns into a fucking crack addict later on. He's totally worthless to us. I mean, he didn't even turn into a good kind of junkie, so he wasn't worthless. He wasn't worth anything to us. But he lived in the town.
What was he before that, though?
We don't know. He was just some guy we picked
He
up.
was just a tag-along.
He was the relative of the guy from the pharmacy that hired us to bring the fucking satellite dish down.
So he's making sure it got safely?
Yeah, he was supposed to be he's supposed to be the guy who's supposed to be keeping an eye on us. We're like keeping an eye on him, trying to keep him out of trouble because
Well, I haven't heard him getting you in trouble yet.
You're about to get into trouble because it turns from satellite dishes into product.
Oh, so we start, and we get stopped several times. We're all fucked up, and they have the Green Angels in Mexico, and they pull over and
yeah. Back up and explain a Green Angel.
A Green Angel is this thing where the Mexicans have this group of pickup trucks with tools and parts of them. They drive up. I don't know if they still have it. They used to drive up and down the highway.
Good Samaritans.
They were good Samaritans. They would fix your car on the side of the road, right?
Oh, yeah. Kind of like AAA, but
they were the Mexican government.
Might show
it was
up.
like a sort of thing. But they'd stop and we'd say, we're too fucked up. I said, no, I got it under control. We'd fix the truck and then we'd drive on another 100 miles and then we'd stop, break down again and I have to fix it again, and then they'd come up and say, no, they were like sick of us,
Hey, my spare's gone. And the alternator.
But, the Mexican kid's he was like freaked out, but we took him down there and then we dropped it off and then we're install the satellite dish and do the whole thing. And then suddenly it's like, well, now we got an empty truck. What are we going to do? Right? We got to go back. So that's when the deal changed.
There you go. Beer this man.
Do I need the beer?
No,
I think
Cedric.
Okay. So it turns out that we knew a bunch of people. We didn't realize that we knew them because we had hired all these maestros to help build these solar pool heaters while we were working down there. That was another one of our scams. Yeah. That was Killer's idea because he's the guy and we want to heat up these fucking pools and in the yads, for these gringos and stuff. And so we heating up the pools in their yads. And so we needed solar pool heaters. So we built all these solar pool heaters with the Mexicans and we hired the maestros to do it.
What is the maestro?
The maestro is the guy who's the top of their trade. So we interviewed all the maestros in town because we're building these copper copper heaters with corrugated tin that is painted black on these angled, welded up frames. And so
like a primitive, like solar heating system for
it's
like
primitive
a pool.
solar heaters.
What channel pirate radio did they listen to?
I don't think they had pirate radio down there.
Sorry.
I love that you've totally tapped into the consumerism of our friends south of the border.
White people, yeah. And also Mexicans. So we're doing
heating their pools and watching satellite TV.
Exactly.
I can't tell how drunk we're getting. Let's get to where the deal changes.
Okay, so the deal changes. So
No, let's talk about pool heaters.
Oh, so we do. Okay, okay, the
That
pool
was
heater thing.
sarcasm.
Okay, so the whole
30
pool heater
gallon or
thing was.
50 gallon?
So we knew all these because we'd already hired all the maestros in town, and when we'd interview them, they'd come over to our place for an interview, and we lived in we just had a yard that we lived in that was like tennis courts, but there was no actual house. We just lived there because it was Mexico. We slept on cots, right? But we would get it for free, So we'd bring all these guys over, and then we'd.
Honey, I have a tennis court in my backyard. Well, the front yard is desert. But
So-
we get a tennis court.
Yeah, fuck it. So these guys would come over, and first thing we'd do we'd open a Ballena and pass it around the Pacificos,
Yeah.
and then we'd light up a joint and pass it around while we're doing the interviews. And if they didn't smoke or drink, then we wouldn't hire them.
Yeah, it's kind of how you get to be a guest on the Shot Clog podcast.
Well, I guess it was a precursor of the modern day drug test, so we're just doing the drug test on these guys. And so the guys we hired, we all turned out to be excellent fucking workers, but then later on when we decided that we needed to bring something back in the empty truck, it turns out we knew all these guys already because we'd already hired them for $8. Oh, because they wanted $8 a day. We said no, $8 an hour. And these guys were floored, right? So that we were paying them like huge money for Mexico at the time, right?
That was a mistake, right?
No, it was not a mistake.
No.
Yeah, it's like giving
They
Kenny
loved
a
us.
hamburger that's 93%.
They all
Look,
thought,
he'll eat a 20%
Yeah,
meat
he'll-
hamburger.
he will
What
if
the
he
fuck
has
are you
to, right?
doing?
so they all loved us, of course. So then when we said, well, you guys got any good weed? They said, they like showed up with all kinds of shit right away, right? So then we said, well, what are we going to do? So we did end up trading. The first load we did, we traded the car for.
Did you refurbish
Well, you
the?
traded the car for marijuana?
And then we
How
had,
did you get it back?
Well, the problem was we took
Carry
the
it?
bus back to go back and get my Ranchero, right? My 61 Ranchero, because you can put it in the body. But
Wait, where did you put it on the bus?
well, so
No, we came
Oh,
back on the bus.
okay, I'm
It took
sorry.
me- I thought the
I'm
same
sorry.
thing.
I was picturing him
Yeah.
like,
So we-
hey, can you open the luggage
Sells the
compartment?
car, takes a bus
So
back,
we
brings his
gave the
Ranchero
car
down.
to the guys in exchange for, I think, 8 kilos or something. Not that much. A small amount, right? Just enough for a week or so. And then, turns out I'd given my partner Killer money all this time to pay the bills, and he hadn't been paying them, right? So,
You're paying that guy, but he's going, oh yeah, I'll go pay those guys. And
yeah,
he
but
doesn't
I knew
pay
Killer,
him.
he's an alcoholic from the Alamo, so he wasn't paying the bills. He was just drinking it and so, anyhow, we're trying to get on the bus to go back and get my truck or my Ranchero, and we get stopped by the local cops.
On this side of the border?
No, on the Mexican side, we're in Alamos, and they stopped us. Actually, it wasn't the cops. The taxi drivers all drove up and blocked us from getting on the bus, right, physically. And you didn't want to get into an altercation, even though my partner Killer is 6'3".
It's a bus, not an Uber.
My partner's 6'3", and he's Killer, and they were like, you're not getting on the bus. But of course, they don't speak English, and
Why did they not want you to go on the bus?
because we'd owed all this money that we hadn't paid our bills apparently because we hadn't paid our bills to the hotel that we were staying at some of the time. We hadn't paid our bills to our restaurant where we're eating all the time, and hadn't paid our phone call bills and any of this
You
stuff.
owed
Right?
money.
We owed money, right? It wasn't that much. It was a few $100.
The taxi cabs were the eyeballs of the.
And they
of
kept
the
an eye on
vendors,
us.
yeah.
And then when the other people we owed money to, they hired those guys to come down and fuck with us. But this is like in the 80s. So even back then, I'm bigger than most of the Mexicans, and because they were all short, back then. And then Killer's 6'3". He's a monster because back then Mexicans were shorter.
They called Killer for a reason.
Well, not really.
All right.
His last name was Pillar.
Oh, all right.
He's a little person.
He was kind of a sweetheart, but he could be vicious, right? So anyhow, the taxi drivers hold us there at the bus station. The fucking cops finally show up. He takes us and arrests us. And we got we probably got a couple ounces just for the ride back on the bus, right, to get back to the United States, right? And so Killer's got it. And he says, I got to take a shit really bad. And so he goes, and they take us to the restaurant where we owed the money, right? He's like, I got to go take a shit. So he goes in the bathroom. And you know how Mexicans, they have the trash can full of toilet paper because they don't want to put it down into their sewer system. So he takes the bag and puts it down at the bottom of the.
You mean their hole?
Their hole. They don't want to put it down the hole, right?
System. It's a hole.
I was trying to be nice.
They don't flush the toilet.
That's where the kid ended up shoveling out the hole.
So Killer puts it down at the bottom of the basket. Then we come out. We're under arrest, and he puts us under house arrest, which means we have to stay at the hotel where we owe money to, and we have to eat at the restaurant that we owe money to. And because they knew that I could make $500
it's like
a day.
kids suspended from school for skipping school.
Yeah, so and the cops,
except you're like an indentured servant because you keep owing more money and they don't let you leave.
Right, but the cops knew that I could make $500 a day. Everybody in town knew this story. It was like, wow, he really is making $500.
Don't let him leave.
So they said, okay, we're putting you in house arrest. You have to make the money. And then, so we got the car back from the Mexicans because they didn't want to do the drug deal anymore because it was like the car was
too much heat.
We were too fucking hot, right? You know, we're under arrest, right? And so,
or vacation. I don't know how you.
Yeah, we get the Mexicans are all on horseback, so the lines of communication are very slow, you know, because
as is this podcast.
Exactly. Right, sorry.
Did they have flashing blue lights on their horses?
No. The Federalized would drive around with us in the evening, go get ice cream, you know. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost. But anyhow, it was no big deal. But we got
paid your way out, I assume.
Yeah. I made the money in a couple of days, paid everybody off. Everybody thought we were great. We sold the car to the people. We had the hotel. We had the bill, and we forged all these documents, 8 pages of documents at the city hall to sell a car.
Were you pissed off at Killer? Like, were you?
I was a little pissed off.
When you're under house arrest, are you going, fucking, you were supposed to pay this fucking bill?
It seems like that shouldn't have happened.
I was totally pissed off at him. I said, you didn't pay the pharmacy either? It's like, well, now they're all on our case, right? You know, I mean, that's where we get our Percocets.
He was bigger than the Mexicans, but he wasn't bigger than Killer.
It was unbelievable. So, but I paid everybody off, and even our pharmacist, and everything was good again, right? You know, and we left town, and then we came back, but then we'd already made
the Ranchero.
So, but then we came back with the Ranchero, so we already did a practice run. And the cops all knew it already, you know, so we might as well do it again, right? So we already knew the chief of police at this point.
You know, take a right, not a left.
He was the one who arrested us, so he was a friend of ours, right? You know, so and we'd go out and buy, you know, I go out to the Campo and buy 25 kilos or 50 pounds or whatever, and then we'd bail it all up in the middle of the night because all the guys that were working for us were all involved with the stuff. And Alamos is a big drug drug growing area, marijuana growing area.
It was like the over in Sierra Vista, the flea market.
It's just like the flea market. The chief of police had already arrested us, and we had entertained him while we were under arrest. So I'd load the truck up, and I'd drive up to the police station.
In Mexico,
the same cop that arrested us in Alamos. And I said, hey, yo voy para Estados Unidos esta noche, quiero un poco coca, you know. And he was just like, and it's a concrete desk and a cast concrete room. And he'd he'd open the drawer and give me a little bit of coke, right? You know, because he was our chief, right? Yeah. You know, anyhow, he ended up
tipping out, I assume.
Well, we didn't have to tip out because everyone else who we were paying was tipping out for us.
No, you were getting coke for the road, right? So you could make it back.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying
we were just getting enough to.
He was bringing commerce to the area.
Exactly. We were very popular. You want me to take the call? No, this is my
early NAFTA.
I think I took the call.
Where's that cricket?
Hey, Larry.
I stole my NAFTA reference. I was going to make a NAFTA joke.
Larry, I'm in the middle of a podcast with Doug Stanhope.
Just say radio show because your friends are as old as you and they don't know what podcast means. Margot thought she had to get into an actual pod and dressed up.
Larry's true story. That was Crazy Larry from prison.
Good. I don't know if maybe that's a teaser for part 2. What time
That might
are we
be,
at?
yes.
We're at an hour and a half.
Well, we can.
Let's get
What,
up to
3?
let's get up to a nice teaser.
Okay. So anyhow, we ran several loads back and forth and stuff like that.
But so the maestros, did they outfit your ranchero so it could take stuff back and forth?
No. What I did was I had the very first Makita cordless drill, right? I mean, they just come out with them. This is like in the late 80s, late 80s. So I had a
18 volt or 12 volt.
I think
No,
it was like a
I'm just
6
kidding.
volt back then, right? It was all, the batteries were built in. It was this little thing.
You got to edit this shit.
And we go down there and we're like taking the truck apart where we had a socket on the end of it. We're taking the truck apart because it's a Ranchero and there's this, they used to be Falcons, but they made them into pickup trucks. So they put this sheet of metal down there. You take it off and there's huge space to put all this weed in.
Will you smuggle drugs at some point?
We put the drugs under there. We put the drugs in that spot. And then you can put them in the side panels of the Ranchero. You can get over like 50, 60 pounds in there, right?
Wow.
And then and I would drive it. I'd go get the coke from the chief of police. And then I would drive all night up the back roads, up the Sonora River Valley. And then,
Don't turn into a GPS on me. Get across the border.
well, we don't have a GPS back then because,
I'm talking about now.
I
And
think
then you take the service
so
road.
then I get to Naco. So then I get to
I just
Naco
turned into
eventually.
Dave and Tell.
Eventually get to Naco, which is maybe like, it takes 10 hours, I think. So I'm in there in Naco and my
The
partner
border.
on the Mexican side, my partner was the chief of police in Naco because somehow I got to know, an old friend of mine was his girlfriend.
Go! Get through the fucking border.
So we go there.
Part 2.
So I pull into the chief of police. He's got a junkyard with a fucking, a junkyard with a tin shed. So I pull into that tin shed and we open the truck apart. We pull out the weed and then we cross the border after that.
Dave, did you not at some point go airborne with your business?
Well, I did have an airplane.
Well, that's going to be part 2.
That's part 2.
We're going to take a fake break, and I'm going to keep everyone on point, I hope, for a part 2, because we get a lot of cocktails going down our heads here, and we know that,
I'm getting lost. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's the point.
We'll get to the meat.
There is no meat. This is the meat.
You do go to prison, and I hope when you go to prison, you don't go, hey, you know what? And Chow Hall. Speaking of Chow Hall, what's up with
I got some
biscuits
good
and
chow.
gravy?
No,
Who
I
likes
actually-
biscuits and gravy?
Tuesdays
That's why I met
was
my-
tacos.
That's how I met Larry. That's how I met Larry. Was at the chow hall.
We're getting there in the next podcast because we're already at an hour and a half. So we'll make the next one a little more succinct.
Okay.
And all right, we'll be back with part 2 with drug smuggling in prison with Electric Dave and Cedric. Thanks for listening to the 100th podcast of the Doug Stanhope podcast and the first podcast of the Shot Clog podcast. We'll see you in an episode.
Where's that
Drinks,
fucking?
anyone?
Where's the
Ready?
cricket at? Where's the cricket?
Outside.
It's outside.
I love the crickets, and I love the
All right.
tinkling ice.
crickets.
We have a bar. It should sound like a
Crickets make
bar.
me
And a
nervous,
cricket.
man.
Yeah, give her your glasses.
And whiskey. Whiskey.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Boxes and boxes of unlabeled crap. If I die now, will they ever get unpacked? Boxes and boxes of unlabeled crap. If I die now, they will never get unpacked. I can't remember when you were mine. I can't remember when you were mine. I can't remember when you were mine. 2003 feels like 1989. Sweet child of and that nightstand I built for you, is it lonely for me alone in your bedroom? Does it cry at night or does it understand as you alone. I can't remember when you were mine. No, I can't remember when you were mine. No, I can't remember when you were mine. 2003 feels like 1989.